Welcome back to Stand Fast. Thanks for tuning in to today's show. Got a few things to discuss, some stuff to talk about. Compromise within the GOP. Is it something that is worth pursuing? Is it something that do the ends justify the means is pretty much what we're going to be looking at when it comes to politics for the Republican Party, for the conservative movement. How are we to operate in our current two-party system? And then finally, if we get time, I might talk about a movie I recently watched and some thoughts I have from it and some of its relevance to today. But thanks for listening or watching. And as always, you're listening or watching to Stand Fast. So people are looking to the mayoral race in LA and specifically Spencer Pratt's campaign and trying to use it as an example of why moderate conservatism, moderate politics in the Republican Party is just the most successful. I recently heard John Doyle go on and on about how the crazy right, the far right wingers are so quick to decry the issues in the Republican Party, but they're not willing to support candidates that'll actually get victories. People like Spencer Pratt, who by all accounts is a moderate, who is really in no form or fashion a true conservative or really all that right wing. He's much more closer to center right. They point to people like him and say, hey, he's following what they believe is the Trump model, and that is moderate politics wins. You want to be center right or center left if you want to have the best chance of winning your elections. They say it's a fever dream. It's a pipe dream. It's an unrealistic thought that we're going to have some radical right-wing politician win this landslide victory and take over the country and fix everything. They say that's a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. They say they look at examples like the unsuccessful third-party candidacies of within recent history, or other more extreme politicians that have failed to win their party's nomination. And they say this is just plain evidence that you have to play into these coalitions. You have to build big tent parties in order to win elections. There's no other way to do it. And if you want to affect change, you have to play the game properly. This has been the call for the GOP in recent years. Charlie Kirk really spearheaded some of this as well. It's one of the ways in which I would say I disagreed with Charlie, one of the very few ways. But one way I disagree with Charlie is I did not believe that tent coalitions were worth pursuing. And this is something you always struggle with, and this is kind of the topic today. Do the ends justify the means? I just don't see the virtue in pursuing a coalition if it means you have to compromise on your convictions in one way or another. We saw this in Trump's 2024 campaign. People came together, politicians, individuals that you would have never thought would ever be on the same side. RFK Jr. joined the Trump coalition. Tulsi Gabbard joined the Trump coalition. Two former Democrats, people who in many ways, probably maybe as much as 60 to 80% of the time, probably differ with President Trump on political issues. They still came under this big tent coalition, even people like Elon Musk, that ended up helping Donald Trump win in 2024. And this is all, again, spearheaded by this thought, this ideology, this philosophy, really, political philosophy, that is the ends justify the means. You have to build coalitions. You have to work with people. You have to compromise on certain things in order to win a victory. Otherwise, you can't affect any change. In their mind, a little is better than nothing at all. And of course, that is true to a degree. It is better to have a little than nothing at all. I think of stuff with the Trump administration right now. It's an administration that I've been very critical of. I'm not a huge fan of the current administration. I think it's full of neocons. I don't like Vance. I don't like Rubio. Don't like a lot of the people Trump has surrounded himself with. But at the end of the day, it's better than the alternative. And a Harris administration would have been detrimental to our nation. I'm not sure we would have survived the 4 years. It's better than the alternative. And it's also better than nothing. Okay, I can cry and whine and complain all I want about immigration because I think it's a major issue in our country. I think it's really the number two issue that politicians, that our government should be addressing is immigration. I think it's a major issue. I can cry and whine about it all I want, but at the end of the day, the policies we have in place now are better than the policies we had during the Biden era, and it's better than nothing at all. It's better than no change. Net zero immigration is better than, an influx of immigrants. It's better than no change in the current status of America's immigration policy. Yeah, that's way better. Like some 22 million people crossed illegally that we know of, crossed illegally during Biden's administration from 2020 to 24. And now it's at pretty much zero. Pretty much zero illegal immigrants are getting across the border. We've really cracked down on sealing the border, and that's a really good thing. Now, have we gone all the way? Have we gotten the mass deportations? No, we haven't. Okay, we still have those 22 million illegals in the country that, we've barely scratched the surface with whatever the high estimates are of the people we've deported, which is some 600,000. That barely makes a dent in the over 22 million. Not, goes without saying the many, many more millions that had come previous to the Biden administration. We're barely scratching the surface of this thing. But again, it is better than nothing. The little bit of progress we've made is better than no progress. For sure, I would concede that point. But is that always going to be worth it? Because it seems that the Republicans are the only ones who are okay with this kind of platform. Because the Democrats, when they get in office, they seem to have no qualms about radically changing everything. I mean, part of the reason why Biden's administration was such a complete and utter failure, the reason that it destroyed so much and everything got so bad so quickly, was because they were so okay with just radically undoing everything that Republicans had worked for in the previous 4 to 8 years. And they're okay with just completely obliterating it. It seems like Republicans are the only ones who are so mild-tempered that we're just okay with, doing a little bit. We're okay with just baby steps. We're not willing to go the full mile because we feel as though it will cause us to lose elections. But also, is it even fair to say that? Because it's not like we're winning elections a lot anyway. It's not like Republicans just have this, stranglehold on elections in this country. We're always duking it out with Democrats. The elections are always tight. They're always close. And we've been playing this game for so long, makes you wonder, maybe if we did have a true radical reformist, maybe if we had somebody like a James Fishback, maybe if we had somebody more radical who wanted to effect change at a more rapid pace, perhaps we would win. Perhaps those would be more successful. Perhaps instead of only having those as a few, spontaneous experiments like in Florida or, in different states or different counties or districts, maybe instead of having those as experiments, maybe if we start making that the rule, people will adapt to the rule and will start voting in people who will actually rapidly affect change. And if you don't believe this can happen, I would point you back to Trump's 2015-2016 campaign. At the time that I was most supportive of Trump when he was making all these big claims, mind you, Trump was not center right. At this point, a lot of people point to Donald Trump and they say he's center right. He's kind of a moderate by most standards. He's not all that radical. Greatest president of the 21st century for sure, but, definitely still a moderate. I don't believe Trump was like that in 2016. Trump was very much a radical in 2016. The moderates were the Jeb Bushes, the Ted Cruzes, the Marco Rubios. Those were the moderates. Those were the safe options that the Republican Party wanted to have nominated for the 2016 presidential election. Donald Trump came in guns blazing with radical new ideas, who was talking about stuff that nobody really cared so much about at the time, like illegal immigration, like blaming the Bush administration for the disaster in Iraq and in these, never-ending expeditions into the Middle East and all these wars and the lies about weapons of mass destruction. Trump was bringing all of this up, and he was the one who was making the claims that he could affect radical change, that he was going to blow up the system, he was going to drain the swamp, he was going to wash out the establishment, he wasn't going to take donor money, he was going to be the man of the people, he was going to affect change on behalf of the American people. And you know what? It worked. He won. He beat by all accounts, it was a miracle. He beat the very popular and really shoo-in favorite to win, Hillary Clinton. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember. I was young at the time, So it's not like I have the greatest memory of this, but pretty sure that Hillary Clinton was heavily favored to win that election. She was going to be the successor to Obama. She was going to be the next, front runner, the next poster child of the Democratic Party. She was going to lead them into the next era of the Democratic Party. And by all, all the polls, everybody was pointing towards that being the victory, especially when Trump got the nomination. They thought she was going to mollywop him. They thought Trump was the worst possible nominee. They already had Trump derangement syndrome. They already hated him. They were so certain that Donald Trump was going to lose to Hillary Clinton. And you know what? Election night came and he didn't. He won. In a landmark victory, he won. And he went into office and he began to effect change. And he started off strong, and he really, I think, in my opinion, by most standards, had a great first term as president of the United States. 2020, obviously, the election was stolen from him. You had COVID, all sorts of things. Biden was that moderate candidate for the Democrats. He was presented as that kind of safe option. He was the vice president to Barack, and he was just going to be that kind of safe guy. And the Democrats were able to pull a rigged election, and they won in 2020, and then Trump comes back in 24, and all of a sudden the whole thing's changed. All of a sudden he's taking donor money. All of a sudden he's working with these big tent coalitions. All of a sudden the people who were never Trumpers, the people who hated him, the establishment guys who ran against him, who had nothing good to say about him in 2016, all of a sudden they're all on his side. All of a sudden, Ted Cruz is pro-Trump. All of a sudden, Marco Rubio is pro-Trump and gets to be Secretary of State. All of a sudden, J.D. Vance, who said himself he's a never-Trumper, who thinks that he was a racist and a misogynist and a xenophobe and thought Trump was just this evil guy. And just in 2022, 2024 rolls around, all of a sudden, J.D. Vance, vice presidential candidate. All of a sudden, all of this changes. RFK Jr., who would have never supported Trump a few years ago, all of a sudden, he joins the coalition. Elon Musk joins the coalition. Tulsi Gabbard joins the coalition. All of a sudden, all these people, Pete Hegseth, who also had very critical things to say about Trump just a few years prior, joins the coalition. All of a sudden, all of these people are joining the coalition, and we ride this wave into 2024, and Biden's super unpopular, and he's barely there mentally. We don't even know if the guy's alive or if he's running the government. Nobody trusts the current administration. Things are terrible. People want change. Trump comes in with his big tent coalition, landslide victory over Kamala Harris. And then you look at what's going on today and you're like, hey, this wasn't like the first term. This wasn't like 2016 Trump. Whatever we had then, we have a different guy now. And whatever we were promised then, we're not getting now. And of course, you have to understand politics. This is a game, and it's a game full of lies, and every politician lies to us. It's their day job. They make a living by lying to the people all the time, the people they claim to represent. They don't really care about us. They lie all the time. That's what they do. So you have to understand there's obviously going to be things that politicians, even Trump, would lie about, that things that he would not really be as efficacious for as he claims to be. But that's very different than completely doing the opposite of what he promised, of claiming that he was going to be the war of peace, no new wars, after pointing out all the mistakes Biden made with Afghanistan, after warning that under Biden that we're going to end up in World War III because of Ukraine and Russia, after saying he's going to end all of that, Trump gets into office and we go to war with Iran, directly go to war with Iran on behalf of a foreign entity. So you have to understand there is a difference between politicians twisting the truth in a campaign to try and get elected and politicians completely stabbing us in the back. And for many in the GOP, for many Republicans, for many people in this country who voted for Trump in 2024, that's how they feel. They feel like they were stabbed in the back. But the establishment right, the neocons still, with unwavering tenacity, will cling to this position that Machiavellian politics works and we have to continue with these coalitions and moderate voices are the ones that win. But so what? Moderate voices may win, but at what cost? I don't want moderate voices. I want radical voices. Okay? I don't want the plain and simple old boring people who aren't going to do anything. I want the radicals. For better or for worse, you want the radicals because we're at a point where that is the only way that effective change will happen. I've always been of the conviction that compromise dilutes the benefit. When you compromise on convictions, you are diluting the benefit of whatever you are compromising for. Like, for example, I think a great example is immigration. How do you compromise with immigration? Yeah, sure, you can seal the border, but if you're still bringing in people to take American jobs through H-1B visas, if you're still hitting the cap of 85,000 each year, and Trump hit the cap last year, I believe, of 85,000, we're still issuing H-1B visas to Indians, 70% Indians, to these Asians who come from cultures that hate America, that are diametrically opposed, that are not compatible, that cannot assimilate. They're coming, 20,000 of them a year are coming to take American jobs, good American jobs. How are you going to seal the border, but then really, in essence, give people golden tickets to take American jobs? How are you going to seal the border, but not deport the 22 million illegals who are already here? You understand, the compromise, it usually dilutes the benefit. Again, there's great things about the border being shut down, and it'd be way worse if it wasn't. If we were still just importing people, it'd be horrible. It's bad enough as it is. It'd be way worse if the border wasn't sealed. And we're making some efforts, and the administration is making some efforts to build the wall, and we're doing better. But it's still diluting the benefit, because the benefit is now net zero immigration, when the benefit could be mass deportations, a cleansing of our American culture and of society, of preventing the unnecessary killings on the streets, of stabbings on subways. That's the kind of stuff that we are trying to prevent. But again, the benefit gets diluted because of the compromise. And in the two-party system, you have to operate in the format to affect change. You just do. You have to understand that the third party that's not the way out. That's not the option. Okay, you still have these lunatics, these buffoons who think that the third party is the way out. You have those libertarians who are clinging to every hope that maybe one day their candidate will get elected. Nope, it's not going to happen, bucko. Sorry guys, sorry libertarians, it's not going to happen. Okay, you're going to have to work through the unfortunate reality of the two-party system. You're going to have to work through the Republican Party, or you're going to have to work through the Democratic Party. That's the only way. Third party isn't the solution, but I do believe radical reform within the party is. Okay, we're not going to run with the Tea Party against the GOP. No, we're going to reform radically the current GOP to fix it so it can actually start working for the good of its constituents. Small wins are better than no wins, but coalition politics, Machiavellian politics, which, Niccolo Machiavelli, he was the whole one who applied that ends justify the means to politics. I mean, for him, a leader was to present themselves as morally virtuous, as strong, courageous, as somebody who cared and had sympathy towards his people, but who was actually inwardly willing to do whatever it takes to gain power. And that for the majority of the last 2 centuries has described our Republican form of government as far as politics and elections are concerned. Our politicians are willing to say whatever is necessary to get elected, while willingly, happily, gleefully crawling over the bodies of others to do it. Okay, it's a power game. It's a struggle for power, and it is something that has created an environment where most of our politicians don't care anymore about the people they represent. They're so far removed from reality that they're not the wiser to it. You have people like Ted Cruz, who he may say all the right things to win, but you see glimpses of what was really going on inside, that his heart is not with the people. His heart is with the donors. His heart is with Israel because he gets money from AIPAC. His heart is with his special interests because they're the ones who, at the end of the day, keep him in power. And all of this points, again, to the idea of compromise. And I do not believe you can mix good and bad. There is no mixing between light and darkness. The Bible talks about this with Christianity. This plays into my immigration policy. Why I support an immigration moratorium is because I believe that there are cultures that are not compatible, and that immigration allows for the importing of incompatible cultures into America. Okay, we have worked hard. Our ancestors, our founders, our forefathers have worked hard, have given their lives to produce a culture that is founded upon the Bible, upon Christianity, to produce a superior culture. The West worked hard to build a superior society, and we got it. And then once we got it, we decided we hated ourselves so much that we needed to destroy our superior culture by importing inferior ones into it. But again, Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness, and what communion hath light with darkness? Why would you yoke yourself together with infidels? Why would a Christian society work with unrighteous societies? That's not to say we have no sympathy, but I'm talking purely in a national sense. It's not the government's job to be the police of the world. It's not America's job to protect the interests of every other people group. It's not the government's job to be evangelistic. It's the government's job to protect its people, to work for the good of its own people. That's a nation's purpose. That's a nation's job. That's a government's job, presiding over a nation. So then why would the government work to incorporate unrighteousness into a righteous society? Unless they just hated their society so much, hated their people so much, that they wanted to see them destroyed. That's the only answer to the question. What part hath Christ with Belial? Or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? It began a century ago. We started to revise our history. We started to hate ourselves. It started with just the importing of bad thinking, of German higher rationalism. It started with the importing of evolutionary theory, the importing of Darwinian thought, the importing of humanistic, naturalistic ideologies and religions. That it started with importing all of that. And then it shifted to people. Now we're going to start importing the primitive groups. We're going to import the Indians, and we're going to import the South Americans, and we're going to import the Asians, and they're going to take our jobs, and they're going to outwork us, and they're going to succeed above us. All the while bringing in a culture that will not assimilate to American culture, and a culture that will work to destroy what we have built here in the West. And the same thing that I do to apply to immigration, a moratorium, because, again, there are just cultures that are incompatible, I apply to politics, because at the end of the day, there are convictions that are incompatible. I'm sorry, but too many of my views are incompatible with RFK Jr. for me to ever want to be endorsed by him. Okay, I appreciate a lot of what the guy does. I think health-wise, it's great. And the Maha, Make America Healthy Again, he's the right guy for it. But too much stuff. Abortion, other more liberal policies that he would hold. There's too much that I'm just incompatible with RFK Jr. to ever work with him. The same goes for a lot of these guys that are in the Trump administration, that are within this coalition that got Trump elected in 2024. So is there a path forward? Yeah, I do think so. And I don't think the path is to, fall in line with idiots like Nick Fuentes, who says vote Democrat in 28. That's stupid. I don't think the path forward is to just buy into the coalition politics and to just vote in the next establishment candidate like Marco Rubio or Vance or whoever they prop up. I don't think so. I think the solution is for the people to take back their party, for the people to raise up their own candidate. How about instead of the establishment telling you who you're supposed to vote for, how about you actually find the candidate and vote for him instead? How about you bring out the dark horse candidates? How about you bring out the next Donald J. Trump, who's going to work for the good of the people, who won't take the donor money, who won't buy into the lobbyists and the special interests, who will actually work on behalf of the people who elect him? Why don't the people take it upon themselves to effect change instead of being so lazy and dumb and just doing whatever the establishment tells them? I think that's the path forward. And that is the path that I will be choosing to take. So I don't know who I'm going to support in 28. I have some people in mind. We'll see who ends up declaring in the 2028 presidential election and in the primaries. I have some people that I hope do declare, and if they do, that I will put my support behind. But, there's no guarantee. And only time will tell. Only time will tell. Memento mori, We're almost there. But pretty sure my time's expired, so we're going to let you guys go. But thanks for listening or watching. And as always, till next time.
Sun is falling, speed.